What's going on, guys? New week, and we're gonna start working on this engine. So, something that we need to do is put an intake on this, which is pretty important to be able to run the engine. So, I actually picked this intake up last week. It is a Victor Jr. Edelbrock intake. So it's a little bit more of a high-rise intake, and the idea is to get this block cleaned up as far as the surfaces. So I got some Scotch-Brites and got a 3/8 tap. We'll get all these holes cleaned out and just kind of get this ready to be able to bolt the intake on and be able to check it out. So before the intake goes on it though, I need to get everything cleaned up, need to vacuum everything out, and I'm actually going to pour the oil in from the top, and we're going to kind of put the oil over the lifters and make sure that we run it down the valley for the cam and everything else. And then I have a flathead screwdriver. We're going to hook it to a drill, and we're going to go ahead and prime the oil pump with the oil, and that will push it throughout the engine, kind of be able to make sure that all the ports are clear. We're getting oil up to the top, and just want to make sure everything is kind of ready to go because the engine has sat for a while. So we want to make sure that this is going to be good to go instead of firing it up and then not have oil pressure and just have messes after that. So the idea is to take a little bit of time, get this thing cleaned up, and just do it right. So I do need to show you one of these things though. So I actually have started scraping the top of this. That's where all this crap is right here, which I'll take the vacuum, we'll get all that vacuumed up. But I was just going along here, moving the rockers, checking everything, and we did run into one little problem. So that one is good, and that one is really, really loose. So, and it could be because this lifter is just dry. I mean, there might not be oil in it. So that's another idea why I want to go ahead and stick the screwdriver down through the distributor hole, and we'll kind of prime that oil up. So if it's priming the oil up, that should shoot to the top of these push rods, and it should be okay. But if it's not, the idea is to put the engine at a top dead center, and we're going to run the valves. And what I mean by that is we're going to adjust the valves. So we might go ahead and do that just for shits and giggles, so you guys can kind of see that anyways. I can act like I know what I'm doing. But for right now, we're going to get all this cleaned up. I want to get all this buffed off here, and we'll go ahead and get the vacuum on it and get it cleaned up. So that's going to be the idea for right now. Okay, so I've been spinning this thing for probably 10 minutes, and we didn't get anything. So there's nothing going up to the top of the rocker arms. Now, I didn't know if I was doing something wrong, because usually whenever I prime these, I actually have the distributor in them. This is the first time that I've done one with the intake off. So, with that being said, I called the engine builder, Dykus. He's the one that built the last few engines I've had, and did a hell of a job. So I knew he would probably know right off the bat without me even showing him, and lo and behold, he knew. So I'm going to show you what he told me, and maybe learn something. So here you go. Okay, so I'm going to take this distributor out. Now I'm going to show you just real quick. There is a hole right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Maybe I can point at it. But it's that hole right there that's right below my finger. Now, whenever you actually spin that shaft down there with just a flathead screwdriver, I was looking and I actually did have oil coming straight out of that hole. Now, which is good. I mean, that means that the oil pump is pushing oil. But the only bad part about that is is without that distributor in there, evidently this side of the engine will actually not get any oil whatsoever on the top of these heads. So once this distributor is down in there, this part right here actually sits flush with that. So I'll stick this back down in here. Now this is just an old distributor that I had. Believe it or not, I was actually going to use it on this engine. But taking it off and everything, I mean, I could have fixed all this, but I can find a used one for the same price that I'm going to be able to fix this for. So, and plus we got some broke wires, which is not a big deal. But still, I'll be able to have this. It'll make a good tool. But now, since that hole is actually sealed off with the bottom of that distributor, you can spin this engine clockwise, and we're pushing oil. And it just shot me. So yeah, we got good oil pressure. Now, I did that. I actually had to hold my finger over this hole, and I turned the engine over 3 or 4 different spots, and then ran the drill for about 30-45 seconds until I started getting oil come up. So I ended up spinning it quite a few times, and eventually I was able to get each one of these to have oil on them. So every one of them is good to go. We're actually going to go a little bit longer on this one, but I wanted to stop and I wanted to show you guys what I was doing. So once I start doing this, I'll go and plug my finger over that, and I'll begin to do that one again. Now, once I get that done, I'll be able to seal this off. And actually, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the valves while we're here. So that's not that bad now, but there's also pressure pushing up on this. So whenever it's down, this has about 1 inch of slack, which is not ideal. So, biggest part, I wanted to get oil on the top of the heads, and we did. So I'm going to start priming this and kind of go from there, and we'll figure out what else we can do to it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to adjust these valves. Now, the way that you want to do this is you're going to do it in 2 motions. So you're going to do some of these valves at one time, then you're going to rotate the engine to where you're going to do the other set. So you're going to do half of them and then the other half whenever we turn the engine. So right now we have it at top dead center, cylinder 1. And the way that I figured that is I actually stuck a spark plug just barely in the head because I don't have a harmonic bolt in the bottom at the end of this crankshaft. So I'm trying to turn the harmonic with both hands and not be able to put my finger over the hole to see if I have compression. Now, I can listen to it with this spark plug barely plugged in there, and you can feel the tightness of it whenever you're coming up on cylinder 1. So once you get to where you're firing on cylinder 1, you want to put that at the 0 mark on your harmonic balancer, because that means that you're going to be at top dead center. Now, with cylinder 1 being at top dead center, what we're going to do is adjust both of those valves. So right here you have cylinder 1. Now the orange, all the ones that are orange are the ones that we're going to actually adjust at top dead cylinder number 1. After we get done with this, we'll adjust them at top dead cylinder number 6. So right now we're going to start with 1 though. So since it's at top dead center, we want to be able to do the entire, both intake and exhaust on the cylinder 1. So we'll do exhaust, intake, intake, and then so on forth. So we'll get to those, the green, after we do all the ones in orange. Now I'll show you how to do that. There's going to be 1,000 different ways that somebody can actually show you, but this is going to be the way that I tighten them. So we're going to back that off. Now right now, you take that socket off. Always take your socket off to test your valve lash, because the weight of this can actually fool you. So right now we have plenty of up and down play. What we want to do is get that at 0 lash. So we're going to take this. I do a 1/4 turn at a time. We have some. Just a little bit. So now we'll go about 1/8 of a turn. Back it off just a little bit. So right there, we're at 0 lash. So there's no up and down play on this push rod. So with that being at 0 lash, we want to actually get this push rod down into the plunger for the final adjustment. So what we'll do is we will go with 0 lash. We'll go half a turn. By doing that, you're actually pushing this down into the plunger where it needs to be. So with that one adjusted, we just do the same process on each one that's orange on that piece of paper. So with that being said, I'm gonna throw you guys on a time lapse and we're gonna get all these adjusted. So that's what we're gonna work on. All right, so we got all the valves adjusted. They're great. So, and we definitely got rid of this rocker there. It was super loose. So now the idea is to go and wipe these off with some brake clean. And we're going to put the intake gasket on. So once the intake gasket is on, then we can just continue on with building this engine. So, yeah. Okay, so we got the intake bolted on. It's torqued down. Went ahead and put the plugs in here. So I am running the coolant temp sensor. It's coming out of the side of the head. I got the dipstick in there. Need to get me a shorter bolt. No big deal. Valve covers are just sitting on there. The idea is I'd like to find a different set. I do not like the look of these stock ones. And as far as the distributor, that's still the same one that I primed it with. I just want to be able to plug that hole so nothing crawls in there while I'm doing other crap. I need to find me a carb. I'm just going to throw a 650 Edelbrock on there and run it. I mean, pretty familiar with the Edelbrocks, so it should be okay. I will find me a distributor eventually. Water pump, all the accessories. I need to get all that crap. Let's see, what else? I think the next thing we will probably start working on is a shifter. I need to figure out a shifter for this thing. So, and I want it to be pretty neat. So that's a goal that we're going to go with, is build something pretty cool. Now, the idea with the shifter is it's also going to be the throttle. So this car is going to have a hand throttle. I don't have enough room for the brake and the gas pedal. I guess I do, but, you know, hand throttles are cool. So we're going to do that. That'll be attached to the shifter. So once the shifter's made, I'll get me a throttle cable made and kind of go from there. Once we got good placement for the shifter, I need to cut this cross member out and actually just get rid of it altogether because I need the drive shaft to come down through there. So with that angle, it's going to hit that cross member. So that's got to go. We'll get a yoke ordered, have a drive shaft shortened. I actually have one over there in the corner. So we'll have it shortened and we will attach to the rear end. So all that sounds pretty simple, but it costs money. So everything as far as the engine and the drive shaft, all that part's going to cost money from here on out. Now the floorboards, I have to get me some steel to do that. So not a big deal. I just need to figure out what I want to use. Now, as far as the battery. So I got the positive cable. It's ran up. It's actually attached to the switch. I need to run some more wire from the switch to the junction on the fuse. Not the fuse, but the distribution block. And that way I can power all that. So I'll get that powered, and then I'll have another actually circuit breaker back here that this red wire connects to, and then it's going to connect to the battery. So we got to get all that figured out. So the wiring is almost complete as far as the main structure. We'll have that done. But yeah, so we got to start spending some money, and I don't want to whatsoever. So I'm going to try and do as much freebie stuff as I can to be able to save a little bit of money for the time being and get some built up. So yeah, right now I'm just I'm going to be hunting parts. And honestly, just looking for random crap to put on this thing. So that's where we're at. What's up, guys? Just got home off work. Let's see. I messed with this car a little bit last night, didn't video. Really, I was just kind of experimenting, just trying to figure out what I want to do next. Now, as far as the floorboard, I would like to do it, but the fact is I have to make a, you gotta have a structure underneath the floorboard. You can't just put flat steel down, unless you're using some pretty thick stuff, and we're not. So I'll have to get some tubing for that, square tubing, and once I get it, then we'll start on the floorboards. Now, something I did mess with was the exhaust. So all of my builds, like, I haven't just put a normal set of headers on it. I got to do something weird, something crazy. This one's a little bit more simple than the rest. It doesn't have near as much like craziness to it, but it's sure as hell not factory. So I'm going to show you what we got going here. Hopefully today we can get these mocked up and kind of figure out what we're going to do. Now, these were a giant set of Zoomies that I had actually built for a 1971 C10. I don't actually have the picture of them up. Thought I did. I'd show you guys that. But this is what we're looking at. So these are not connected. All they're doing is just sitting on there. I just want to get a good idea on where I want them. And I got to say, that looks pretty good. So the initial idea was to run a Zoomie straight down and just come up right there, which is okay. That would look good too. But I've seen it done. So with this, it's a little bit different. And as far as shooting flames, it's going to go a lot higher. So that's what we're kind of aiming for anyways. So I'm going to get these kind of tacked into place. And later on, whenever I finish the build, I will actually cut these. And I will put adapters on here to go from 1 3/4 inch, I believe is what this is. It's either 1 3/4 inch or 2 inch. And we'll go to a 3-inch pipe. So that ought to be a lot bigger tips. But for the time being, this is what we're going to run with. And just kind of get a good start on it. So, yeah, we're going to get this kind of tacked up here. Okay, got the exhaust kind of mocked up here. I'm actually going to take these off, weld around them, clean them up, and I guess wait for some gaskets and then we'll mount them back up there. But not too bad. Whenever I got to work on the engine, it's actually going to be a pain in the ass now because these are in the way. But personally, they look pretty good. I think they're worth the trouble. So that's what she's going to look like. Not too shabby. right, everything is welded. Good thing about these welds is I can just put some high heat paint over them and they will look like they're factory. Other than that, I got to cut the edges of these bolts down so they can actually go in there. They're a little bit of a tight fit, so not a big deal. But while I'm messing with that, then that'll give me some time to get some gaskets, and yeah, so it should turn out pretty cool. Looks pretty good. So looking forward to getting this thing started, see how loud these are. You know, I bet a smaller pipe, it might be a little loud. We'll see. With nothing being done to the engine, it shouldn't be ridiculous. So we'll just have to find out whenever it's running. But for now, that's as far as I'm going today. And I'll see you guys when I see you. Well, it's Friday. You know, the last couple days I've just been kind of knocking stuff out. Just every 5-10 minutes, piddle with something, step away, just kind of go back at it. It's been pretty busy this week. Let's see. Couple things I've done. I know yesterday and today I ran the main battery cables to the engine block, to the junction, to the back, and got all that ran. And I've also been plumbing in the gauges, so I've actually hooked up the wires to the oil gauge and the temp sensor. So those are hooked up. And yeah, I'll show you real quick what we got going on. All right, so I got the battery cable. It's hooked up to the battery back here. Now these wires have not been tied up yet. They're actually gonna get loom and everything else, so they'll look a lot better. But I'm just trying to run everything, and then we'll finalize it whenever the rest of the engine is actually in. By that, I mean we need the water pump, we need the alternator, need all that type of crap before we even begin on tidying all this up. So we got a master switch. So that's the indicator light to show that the switch is actually on. And then you also have the backlighting. We have our taillight switch. And then you got your turn signals, or right turn, left turn. Those are in. Now the oil gauge, I got my drill hooked up, so I'll kind of give you guys an idea of how we're gonna do this. So reaching over here, I'm gonna turn this drill. It's gonna count, it's clockwise. You can actually see the oil pressure going up. So yeah, stop the drill, goes down. Now we got that hooked up. As far as the temp, we won't know if it works until I actually get coolant in the system. But that's not gonna happen until we put a radiator on. And a water pump and plugs and all this other crap. So that will come after a bit. Oh, also, I got our ignition wire going out there. It's not hooked up to the starter because I don't have a starter yet. But I did put an indicator light on here just to show that if this switch ever goes bad, that means that this light will not come on. But if the switch is good, then you got an indicator light, only whenever you're trying to start it. So I just figured I'd put that on there just so I could diagnose the switch if I ever get stuck somewhere and it doesn't want to start. So that'll be a simple fix if so. But the main part of the wiring is, I mean, pretty much done. Let me pop out of here without banging my head on this thing. All right. We can move out of here. So, yeah, those exhausts still look pretty damn cool. So now, like I said, we got our main harness, not our main harness, but the main power wire. Go to that junction. We have the ground wires. I have them going to the actual block. So I have the main one going from the battery to the block. And then that one splits off and goes to the ground junction. So those are hooked up. This is the ignition wire. This is the cable that's actually going to go on the starter. We got our ignition wire for the distributor, oil pressure sensor wires hooked up, temp sensor wires hooked up. Basically everything engine-wise to be able to make this thing run is hooked up. So that will be pretty simple. Whenever we get the rest of the parts, all I got to do is put them on and we'll start the damn thing. So, well, besides fuel line, but you know, water bottle does just the same amount to be able to get that started. Now, I do have another distributor. Actually got donated by a buddy. We had rebuilt his engine in January 2 years ago. So he put a new one on whenever he did it. And we actually did the same thing that we did with this one. We actually just took the bottom gear off, and that's what we primed his engine with. So I got the gear. We'll stick that on the distributor. Has wires and everything on it already. So I'll get some plugs. We'll put all that crap where it needs to go. But for now, that's about as far as we're going to go this week. So as far as next week, no idea. You know, I mean, at this point, we're just kind of winging it and going with the flow. So whatever I decide to do one day, we'll do. So for the next couple weeks, you guys are probably going to see a lot of hopping and skipping around, doing different things. And the reason being is because I want to stay constantly working on this thing. I don't want to just wait on parts whenever I could be working on something else. So there'll be a lot of that. Yeah, it's moving along. So we have, let's see, a little over 2 months left to get this thing running and driving. So seems like a long time, but in reality, it's not. So anyways, that's going to end this video for this week. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys next week.